What happens when a landlord tries to play dirty, threaten eviction, and bully their tenant? Only to have the tables turned in the most satisfying way. This isn't just a story about a rental dispute. It's about cunning, patience, and karma hitting exactly where it hurts. Here's how Chuck lost his half of a house. Before we jump in, hit that like button if you've ever witnessed unfair treatment or been wronged by someone in a position of power. And subscribe for more stories of clever revenge and sweet, sweet justice. Back in the late 90s, my buddy Dan rented a house from Chuck, a former high school classmate who'd inherited it from his grandmother. Chuck had no real interest in living there himself. The place was, let's just say it had personality. Pink bathrooms, appliances in a shade the previous tenants probably called harvest puke, dark wood paneling everywhere, and a conversation pit in the rumpus room that screamed late 70s interior designer hallucination. Yet for $600 a month, Dan had scored a steal. This was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house with a garage and a full-acre backyard. Practically a mansion compared to my 1-bedroom apartment renting for $425. 4 months, Dan's place became the unofficial hangout for our crew. We spent nights in the rumpus room, gaming, laughing, and enjoying life. It was perfect. Until Chuck decided to stir trouble. One early morning, around 6 a.m., I get a call from Dan. His voice is tense. "Hey, do you have the home number for that plumber we know?" Apparently, Dan had been having drainage problems, and Chuck, supposedly the landlord, kept promising to send someone. But now there was a literal inch of sewage in the basement. Urgency. Panic. And Chuck's answering service? Not picking up. So I passed along the plumber's number. I assumed that would be the end of it. Problem solved. Life goes on. But here's where Chuck's nature starts showing. The next time I see him, he's dashing across the park, grabbing me mid-stride to vent. Can you believe Dan called the plumber? He let the guy find a bunch of code violations, and now I have to fix all this stuff. My jaw dropped. Chuck wasn't angry that the plumbing was a mess. He was angry that Dan had handled an emergency himself. It didn't stop there. Instead of paying attention to his responsibilities, Chuck starts pretending Dan didn't pay rent and files for eviction. Classic landlord intimidation. Try to scare the tenant into submission. Dan, of course, is calm. He doesn't vent or panic. When I meet him that evening, I say, "You do realize he's trying to evict you, right?" Dan just smirks. "Don't worry. I have a pretty good lawyer, and that's all I'll say." And with that, he's back to watching the Wings game. Confidence. Patience. Trusting the system. I start to realize the brilliance here. Dan isn't just defending himself, he's letting Chuck hang himself with his own arrogance. Months pass. Dan's life goes on. He switches back to day shift, the house becomes the hangout again, and Chuck? Still simmering somewhere in the background, probably plotting his next move. Then one bitter cold Saturday in January, the drama returns. We're all in the rumpus room, controller in hand, screaming at the TV while playing Quake, when Chuck's sister, Elle, shows up at the sliding doors. She's carrying some paperwork, her expression serious but soft-spoken. Everyone pauses. Silence falls over the room, controllers still in hand. Elle knocks. Dan stands. "Which one do I sign?" "Wait, this one," he asks, listening carefully. Elle points with a pen. Dan scribbles. The tension is thick. We barely understand the whispers of words, but the context is clear. Something monumental is happening. Finally, Dan explains quietly. "So, I'm sure all of you have heard that Chuck tried to evict me, and he lost. He had to pay me more than his half of the house was worth to make me go away." Murmurs ripple through the room. Shock, disbelief, satisfaction. Dan smiles. Elle is my new landlord. And just like that, Chuck's plan has completely backfired. He tried intimidation, manipulation, and scaring his tenant, only to lose control of the property entirely. The house is legally Dan's to continue renting, with Elle as the landlord ensuring fairness. Imagine the scene. The smell of winter air seeping through the sliding doors, the soft hum of the video game, the faint tension in the room as Elle hands over the papers, and Dan's calm but victorious expressions. The cold January wind couldn't chill the warmth of triumph. Chuck's hubris, his endless scheming, his attempts to intimidate a responsible tenant, every manipulative tactic, crumbled under legal reality. And the feeling of sweet justice? Electric. Dan's calm, patient approach allowed the law, strategy, and fairness to do the talking. Chuck lost his half of the house not because of rage or force, but because he underestimated Dan's patience, intelligence, and composure. Chuck went from predator to powerless. The tables turned. The very thing he tried to weaponize, eviction, legal intimidation, became the instrument of his own loss. We all watched in awe. Dan, victorious but humble, set a precedent. Respect the people around you, or watch karma unfold in ways you never expected. This story isn't just about a house. It's about patience, strategy, and letting justice happen through proper channels. Sometimes the best revenge isn't yelling or confrontation. It's planning, resilience, and letting someone's own hubris bring them down. If you loved seeing entitlement backfire, hit that like button. Share your stories of clever justice in the comments. And subscribe for more tales where patience, brains, and a little strategy serve the sweetest revenge.